Hello, everybody. Welcome to it. It's G Talk. So excited to have you all with us here. We've been promoting this date and this time for quite some time now. And of course, it is Wednesday, the 29th of April, 1 o'clock, and we're glad to have you here. I'm still safe and managing to survive day 34 of lockdown. But cabin fever has been real and it's starting to get to me. But nonetheless, as I said, welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. I'm sure many of you have been wondering what is G Talk about and what is going to be explored. Fundamentally, this is a new development in an area that is certainly going to grow, one that will see great conversations being held, and it does stem from a great passion of mine, which is public speaking, and of course my career, being someone who works within the field of communications with corporates in the media space, and of course even in consultative services. So this will be the beginning of a new journey where we look to have interesting conversations that many of you can build up on, that really speak to personal development, that really speak to the honest reflections that we can unpack in each other, engaging and sharing elements where we can grow. So I'm quite excited. As you know, my first guest is Jayshree Naidoo. She is the CEO and co-founder of YIEDI. This is a business which focuses on SMME acceleration, innovation, as well as providing support not only to individuals, but entrepreneurs as well, in order to catapult them into a new level and category of growth. So to all of you who have just joined, thank you so much. Wave, wave, wave. Hi, Nosy, Candy. I see quite a few of you who have logged on, and thank you so much. Amu as well. Special shout out to her. And of course, let me introduce you to Jayshree. She's actually worked quite extensively within the banking environment as well as corporate sector in South Africa. And she's dabbled into entrepreneurship. She's gone back into entrepreneurship and continues to be a very important voice when it comes to the development of businesses in South Africa. And Jayshree is with us on the line today. Jayshree, a warm welcome. Such a pleasure to have you as always.
Thanks so much for having me, Gugu. I'm really looking forward to our first IG Live.
Indeed, first one, or maybe second one, because you and I did a test round. We got a lot of feedback on that one in terms of managing the technicalities. But I think to provide some perspective for many people who have joined us for this conversation, it stems on the back of a TED Talk that you recently did, which is titled, "You Are Not Your Job." And why it really stood out for me, and most importantly yourself, is because in my work in the media, day after day, I tend to focus on heavy, hard-hitting macroeconomic news. Even in my interactions with corporate clients as well, we tend to focus on conversations that really speak to a shift that needs to take place in policy, in business dynamics and strategy, and most importantly, in leadership. But it's not often where conversations like this really hit home for individuals who, when we take a look at the big story around businesses going through retrenchments, just today, the likes of Edcon going through liquidation now, or business rescue, it really speaks to the fact that we're seeing a heightened level of individuals losing their jobs. And for many South Africans, your job tends to become a part of your identity. You start off a career, you walk into an organization, you craft that, and whenever you meet people and you introduce to them, it's usually, "Hi, my name is, I'm so-and-so from this institution. I head up this department. I'm a member of this team." And even if you don't force yourself to introduce yourself that way, you'll probably be asked that question when somebody says to you, "So, what do you do?" So for many South Africans, this is a hard-hitting conversation, and one that we hope will resonate with many South Africans who might find themselves either with the prospect of losing their job, of changing their job, or of having to recreate themselves within the realm of entrepreneurship as well as their career. So let's start off with that TED Talk and really provide some perspective as to what the inspiration behind this conversation was, and most importantly, where some of the key learnings came from for you.
So thanks, Gugu. When I started planning to do a TED Talk, I had so many ideas of what I wanted to talk about. But then I decided to choose a topic that was really close to my heart, but also a topic that I had experienced firsthand and personally. And it's important to tell stories that are close to your heart because that allows you to be authentic in the message you're trying to get across, and also allows you time to reflect on what some of the lessons were that you actually were able to get as part of this journey. And that's the reason I chose the topic of people are so much more than the jobs they do, because I truly believe in that motto.
And that's quite important because in your work through YIEDI, you actually work quite extensively, not only with corporates, but also with individuals to really tap into skills development, entrepreneurship, innovative thinking as well. And I understand that you met two very interesting gentlemen who were very different, but hence contributed to this particular line of thinking.
Definitely. I mean, I've met hundreds of people, through the work that I do and the roles that I played in large corporates. The two individuals that I talk about in my TEDx talk, one of them was Adam. Now, Adam used to send out so many emails that at one time I even thought he was a system because mails used to come from Adam. But Adam was actually a print controller, and he worked in the print room. In this large development finance institution that I worked at, many people had never even met Adam because he's one of those individuals that you never see, but you get a lot from. And I met Adam through work we were doing as part of an innovation champion program. And Adam had applied and was accepted. And I could see that he was an amazing facilitator. I mean, here's someone that works in a print room as a print controller and had such amazing negotiation, facilitation skills. And on deeper reflection and getting to know Adam, we found out that he was actually a minister in his church who facilitated marriage counseling, advice, and dealt with difficult youth.
That's tough.
I know. So if you're in a relationship, or anyone that's viewing is in a relationship, if someone can facilitate a marriage conversation, they really have great facilitation skills. And we got to know Adam, and people like Adam. They're so much more than just a job title. So that was just one of the individuals I met. And the other was a gentleman by the name of Luke Warner. And Luke was a young individual. He had come through a graduate program for a large bank that I worked with, found himself working in the investment banking division. Those guys that wear those fancy suits, all dressed up very nice. You know them. You've seen them. And normally when you get a position like that, you feel like you've arrived. That's it. That's the be all and end all. But Luke is what we refer to as a closet entrepreneur. Although he held an amazing corporate job, he really wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when we ran an internal innovation competition, he submitted over 40 ideas. And 3 of those ideas made it to the top 20. One of them made it to the top 10, and he came third. He resigned from the organization, took his winnings with a business partner, started a business. He managed to raise over 36 million for that business last year. He employed 13 people, and he's now exited the business. So he's gone full cycle. So people like Luke and people like Adam, it just shows you that you're so much more than just a job or just a job title. They really had something else that was driving them and that they were passionate about. So those are the 2 individuals, Gugu.
I am amazed by that story, and I think a lot of us will be asking, how do we become more like Luke? But before we get there, there's obviously 2 very key lessons that have been driven out of these 2 individuals in terms of how they recreated themselves and moved away from just being their job titles, which for many of us in South Africa becomes part of our psyche. Are there elements in terms of our mental thinking that we need to bear in mind here? How we manage success with a job title and how it applies to our mental thinking and processes?
Absolutely. So if you take someone like Adam, you would think from the outside, but was he content working in the print room? How many years was he working in the print room? Why didn't he apply to be a facilitator? He didn't need to. Because if you're in a corporate job, and if that job is a way of generating an income, but you have a passion and you're able to live out that passion through a side hustle, which I talk about a lot, or something that you're doing part-time on weekends. So lots of individuals in corporates, you'll find they at low levels from a job level perspective, but they're so happy. And when you get to know them, you realize what's driving their level of happiness is not their job title, but what they do outside of the working environment. They're contributing to their church. They are volunteering at a rescue shelter. They're counseling, unhappy married couples. They're doing something that's allowing them to live their passion. So Adam didn't need to be a facilitator or be appointed as someone more senior. He was passionate enough because he lived out his purpose outside of work. And if you take Luke's example, Luke knew that although he was in corporate and he had a great career path ahead of him, he could have gone into executive levels very easily with his skill set. But he wanted to live out his purpose full-time by being an entrepreneur. And what he did while he was in the corporate role is use his skills, grow his network, attend development programs. He even attended an accelerator that we offered to staff and external entrepreneurs. So he made time to do those things. So when he was ready to leave the organization, he had already built up a skill set around him and a network around him.
Some interesting stats and figures that you're sharing with us there in terms of data and people adapting. For those of you who've just joined us, hello. I see the waves, I see the comments. Thank you for joining us in this conversation where I'm speaking to Jayshree Naidoo. She's the CEO of YIEDI, giving us feedback in terms of a very important TED Talk she recently hosted. Reflecting on the fact that we are not our jobs. And why we find that this is an important conversation to have right now, it's against the macroeconomic context of South Africa, where with increased businesses under pressure, many of us working from home and our jobs really changing, a lot of individuals actually attach their identity to their jobs. Yet, if you find passion and fulfillment elsewhere, you will be able to find that you are beyond and more than just your job title. Jayshree, I do want us to jump onto an element that was highlighted from the example that you made and from Bloom Marketing, Inside and Out, that also shared a comment in terms of accessing these passions. And you mentioned side hustles. And for some people, it's what we're doing right now. It's having an IG conversation. For other people, it's doing hair or nails or makeup. But of course, what we need to do is to monetize this, because sometimes passions can fuel you, but we tend to get demotivated when there isn't some form of capital coming through. How do we get the right balance there in terms of monetizing the things that actually drive us to become a lot more happy?
So, Gugu, I've chatted to you about this previously, but with those that have joined us, I'll share it again. We ran programs for over 300 staff that were retrenched from two of the major banks in South Africa. And as part of their reskilling, the banks offered them entrepreneurship development training. What we found with these individuals is they have untapped skills that they have never explored or utilized because they were consumed by their jobs. So when you get into a job, for example, you study something like graphic design or architecture, but you can't find a job straight away in that field. So you take the first job that comes to you. 20 to 25 years ago, those jobs were in government sector, in the financial services sector. So those institutions were employing. You get swallowed up into this corporate job. You start off as an administrator, a teller, a secretary, a banker. And then all of a sudden, you are being promoted in these roles. You've forgotten that actually I'm an architect, I'm a graphic designer, I'm an artist, I'm an engineer. And all of those skills are put on the back burners, and you start acquiring new skills. Those new skills don't necessarily fuel your passion. They fuel your bank balance. They help you with your home loans, and they help you with your vehicle finance, and they help you put your kids through school. And all of a sudden, you have forgotten the reason you went into this space in the first place, and it just becomes a job, and you get lost to your job. You get swallowed up by it. So we encourage individuals, to answer your question, to understand what your skills are. What are those skills? And they may be newly acquired skills that you found in the kitchen. baking up a storm during COVID-19. I mean, there's been amazing chef skills. I've got skills I never knew I had, making interesting things in the kitchen. Or maybe sewing has become your passion because you've had to sew up some stuff for the kids for school plays and the like. Or on a more serious note, maybe speaking, because you find more and more people are asking you to MC their events or at a family function give a speech. So you realize those are your skills. How do you take those skills, harness them, grow them, and then use that to actually kick off a business? So that's what we encourage staff that have been retrenched to do. Look deep inside. And if those skills are in line with what you were doing in your corporate role, that's also okay. But just find a way to monetize those skills.
And that's quite important. And when it comes to the monetization, if that's a word, of your skill, so often it needs a network that you can tap into that can actually access information for you or share the messaging around this new tool or product that you're going to deliver. And of course, also building up your thought leadership. These are just a few of suggestions that I understand you've also shared in your TED Talk to basically help us expand and change from just our jobs.
Definitely. So while you're in a corporate, you should grow your thought leadership. There's nothing preventing you from creating a LinkedIn profile or an Instagram page where you talk about your amazing cooking skills, your amazing speaking skills, your passion for architecture. Even if you're a banker right now or you're a journalist right now, but you want to transition in your 50s or your 60s to interior design, then start writing about interior design concepts. Start researching those concepts. Start publishing more on that and become a thought leader for the space that you aspire to being part of.
Jayshree, we've got millennials here on IGTV, so we're not looking at transitioning in our 50s. We want to do it now. and that's another important element, because there might be a few of our guests who are joining us today who are lucky enough to still have their jobs, and which will be quite critical because, as you said, we've all got bills to pay and a livelihood to maintain. But for those who are still in their jobs and are fearing what life after lockdown might look like, how do you adapt? And I guess leadership comes into play here, because depending on who your seniors are in the organization that you work for, and even leadership of self also becomes a challenge that we need to navigate.
You have to adapt by keeping your skill sets relevant. The saddest thing I see, and, we deal with, there are individuals at all ages that are retrenched, right? This is the other misconception. People feel, the older people are getting retrenched. We've had people in their 20s being retrenched, 30s, 40s, right up to the 60s. What's important is you keep your skill set relevant. The most upsetting thing for me when we start a session with individuals is we ask them, so what have you been doing for the last year? And some individuals have said to us, actually, things have been very quiet. I haven't been doing anything new for the past 6 months. Like, if you haven't been doing anything new for the past 6 months, that was already a writing on the wall to say something is coming down the line. My job, I'm not an essential part of this machine, right? I'm not an essential cog. So what do I need to do? Digital reskilling, Gugu. We're doing IG live sessions. We're delivering content via webinar. We are doing podcasts. So how are you using digital and digital skills to take yourself into the new way of work? So my advice is make sure you up your game in terms of your skill sets. And if you're not digitally inclined, like you and I were a few days ago when we were practicing, if you're not digitally inclined, search, Google. We were sharing stuff online just to learn how to do these things. So skill yourself, use the free online courses. The amazing thing that has happened with COVID-19 is that so many institutions have opened up their learning platforms for free to individuals. But so few people are taking up the opportunity. They're rather busy catching up on Netflix series and cooking up a storm instead of using this time to garner skills that they're going to need for the new way of work.
It's about balance, Jayshree. So maybe we need to get that realignment right. But I love the words and feedback that you share in terms of technology. A good friend and colleague of ours, Mushambi Mutumba, has published a book called Tech Adjacent, and he's recently been hosting tech conversations, or adjacent conversations rather, on IG Live. He's one of many more entrepreneurs who are proudly African and offering guidelines as to how we need to adapt, how we need to remain agile. So, of course, key learnings that we can develop here. To all of you who've joined us, thank you for the feedback. I see some thumbs up, and of course some saying this is quite informative. Please do keep your questions coming. We do want to get some of your perspective, especially Maria. She mentioned that she was a corporate giant and corporate animal earlier on. Yes. Tanya, you mentioned Mushambi's book. Yes. They are as well tech adjacent. I do want to get your thoughts, though, Jayshree, on how we need to tackle this, especially from a South African perspective. For a lot of us, it's overwhelming, it's uncertain, and we are, for the life of us, holding on to whatever sense of identity that we can hold on to. And there's just the fear of actually starting. And I guess in some of your learnings with entrepreneurs, your learnings from your own personal experience, adapting from financial services to entrepreneurship, technology, innovation, you obviously had some key life lessons that you've learned in terms of just sucking it up, taking the jump, and living to your true and full potential. How best have you done that?
So I'm very clear on what my values are, what's my purpose, what drives me. And whenever I was unable to live a life of purpose in a job, I resigned. So I've resigned from corporate South Africa 3 times to become an entrepreneur. I've changed jobs so many times. I've held, I think, probably about 9 different jobs in lots of different companies. So you've got to know what is driving you, what's driving your purpose, what's driving your passion. If a role or an organization no longer aligns to your value system, you have no reason to be there. Because if so I seem to have lost you for a minute there, Gugu, but you're back. So if you find that you're losing yourself to your job, you should leave. Because you don't want to lose yourself to your job. And that's the saddest thing we've seen with individuals that have been retrenched. Over the years, it's not about losing their jobs. It was about losing themselves to their jobs. And it's easy to get caught up in that job title. I know I've held some amazing job titles in the companies that I've worked at. And it's nice to have a head at the front of your business card, hand those out. It's nice to shake hands with executives and prime ministers. We've hosted presidents, we've hosted ambassadors. We've been to ambassadors' residence. But that's not who I am. That's just something I did while I had a job. So be true to your purpose, what drives you. And if what drives you no longer exists, then look outside to find what's driving you, because that's the only thing that will help you survive times like this. Otherwise, I would have just gone mad, during these crises if I wasn't doing something I really, really loved.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I recall when I first met you, you held a huge position at a financial services institution in South Africa. Tanya might recall, Tanya Habimana, she's on the line as well. And you've certainly managed to change a lot of people's lives in terms of following your own lessons and living out to your true potential. As we wrap it up, Jayshree, I see lots of people are encouraged. Lebu Lion as well, huge fan of yours. She's come through to say that over the years it was about losing themselves to their jobs, which is quite profound. And I guess why we're having this conversation again, it's quite pertinent because we're speaking to a very young audience, an audience that is agile, an audience that at times can suffer from imposter syndrome, and at the same time has various huge dreams for themselves in order to achieve and accomplish. You're a mother as well. And I want to make it slightly personal as to how you keep your children motivated. And perhaps there might be learnings that we can impart on our peers and maybe even on our own parents as to how best they can support us.
Oh, my favorite topic. You'll have to give me another half an hour. Just kidding. So both my kids, I'm extremely proud of them. They're both creatives. They're both entrepreneurs, in fact. And, that could be quite scary, living in a home where all of you are entrepreneurs, right? We live in a home where every single person here is an entrepreneur. So my advice to individuals is harness your kids' passion. It doesn't have to be a route that's traditional. Let them explore things that they really love. If art is what they love, then encourage that and let them grow that. If photography is something that they love, then let them grow that passion. Give them all of the support, but remember, you are not their business advisor. You are first their parent. So you've got to love and care and grow them so they believe in themselves. So we believe in positive thinking. I encourage my kids to read about positive thinking. I encourage them to see potential in themselves and in others. And I actually get them to deliver work for us. And please pay your kids because they've got to understand the value of money. So my daughter does all of my artwork for so many of my social media engagements, and I pay her for that. My son does the photography for me and for entrepreneurs, and I pay him for his services because there's a value attached to your skill, and you should teach those lessons very early on.
Love it. Jayshree, we've got some positive feedback so far. Miriam, you finally joined us. We were waiting for you earlier, that corporate citizen, mentioning there that, again, how best do we monetize our passion and our skill? And we touched on that, on developing your craft and, of course, making sure that you constantly upskill yourself. Find a great network in order to share your messaging and your service across too as well, Miriam. I also see Moha mentioning here that she suffers from imposter syndrome and is trying to manage those emotions. I'll tell you what, that sounds like a great conversation we need to have in the upcoming days. But if you also go to ICP's page, formerly known as justsamke.com, ICP, she's got an amazing conversation as well, where she challenges the imposter syndrome, especially for us as females within the professional space. Awesome. I think we're going to leave it there today, Jayshree, unless you have some closing remarks, some positive feedback from Lebu Ranks as well as SK.
No, thanks so much, Gugu. So I see some of our entrepreneurs joined online. I see Nozi was on the line as well, Nazipo. So it's lovely to see some familiar faces online. The one thing I did want to touch on, Gugu, which is really important, is the role of leaders. As individuals, I also think it's our responsibility to hold our leaders accountable. Not all leaders lead. Not all managers have the ability to lead. So if you find yourself with a leader that is not allowing you the space to grow, challenge that, have a conversation. Sometimes they may not even be aware of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And for those individuals that access this later on or who are online now, if you are in a position of leadership, hold your leaders accountable, hold your managers accountable for the people that they are entrusted with. It is a huge responsibility to manage people. So hold them accountable to do the right things, grow people the way they should be growing, and not treat them or bully them into doing things they shouldn't be doing. So it's really important for our leaders to get the right skills in how to manage people and how to lead people the right way.
That's a big challenge and a big task, but definitely a skill that needs to be developed, especially for those who are in leadership positions who are watching this conversation today. So we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for the feedback, reminding us that we are more than our jobs. And it really comes at a time where even Native Rebels, _Rebels, mentioned that I was retrenched last year and started Native. It's daunting and scary, but it's freedom. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for, making sure that everybody can live their life to the best and the fullest that is available. And most importantly, not aligning yourself to titles that might not serve you in the long term. And we're getting to a point where we don't just respond to what do you do, but rather, who are you? Right? I think that's the question we need to answer next. So Jayshree, a great pleasure having you. There's many people giving you positive feedback here today. So thank you to everyone that's watched. And of course, thank you, Jayshree. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Gugu. It was so much fun. I look forward to doing it again. And thanks everyone that tuned in. And I'm looking forward to the recording as well so we can share it more broadly. Thanks, Gugu. Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining and watching in, and for the feedback, all of you who've sent through your messages. This will be on my profile for you to watch for the next 24 hours. Until next time, where we do this on G Talk, have a wonderful day further, guys.
Bye.